like to start off with some statistics. 70% of the global workforce is made up of passive talent. If we think about that, about 87% of that group is actually open to new opportunities. So there's a huge market that remains untapped for those that are actually still looking in the ways of reactive recruitment. There's a gap in the enterprise HR tech stack. To find and track current and future prospects, candidates who are potentially interested in you but haven't applied for a job through your website or through a career site is incredibly onerous and a difficult task. All the data is siloed. It's sitting in different recruiters' spreadsheets, emails, and there's no central single source of truth to actually keep track of this. And then, of course, after that, after you have that data, to actually action that data in different ways to engage your talent. If we think about the reactive models and what they do, many times these things will increase the cost, time, and even increase attrition. This happens because maybe the candidate doesn't actually know whether or not they're a good fit for your company. A lot of times what we're seeing is recruiters and TA professionals, part of what they have to do is actually help candidates understand the brand of the business, help them understand the culture that they're going to be getting involved with, and it's not just about a job. It's moving from a focus on a vacancy to focusing on the candidate. That candidate could potentially be a good fit for a dozen vacancies for your business, based on the skill sets they have, where they want to work, what their ambitions are as a person, what their cultural values are. So when we're focused on a vacancy, we really limit that window on a candidate to that specific job set, and that may be our only window to get them to come into the business. Hence why we want to push to a more proactive model. And this is basically what Beamery thinks about. When we think about the tech stack that exists for most companies, this may look familiar. You have an ATS and it takes up a bulk of the work that your team has to use this system to actually try to engage candidates. They use the system to try to have a single source of truth on who these candidates are and get data on them. Search is horrendous in these things, I'm sure as many of you know. Pipeline is kind of a pseudo-existing pipeline depending on where you're holding that data. So you'll have a lot of search-based activities, but keeping track of even the people that aren't hired, all those silver medals that you worked incredibly hard on, it's incredibly difficult to keep track of them and re-engage them at the right time when you can put them back into the system. So when we think about what a great candidate experience requires, it requires a new approach. It requires an approach where you have a full understanding of what's happening before the job actually goes out. As you try to build your team to a more day zero time to fill, part of what helps that is pipelining. So if we think about the ATS and what it really represents, there's so much engagement and, well, if you think about the candidate as a shopper, what they're doing is looking for an opportunity that fits them, where they can grow in a career, or potentially where they can just contribute, where they want to contribute to a business and buy into the brand. Which means that the ATS really represents a checkout for the candidate. Once they've actually been sold on that, they can now become that buyer and go through the final assessment stages to make sure that you check all the boxes for the hiring manager. Where Beamery sits in all of this is really to help build these talent communities and talent pools, capture data, and engage these candidates. So when we think about Beamery, it's really about being a talent engagement platform. So the CRM is really just the beginning of this. The CRM is really the place to hold the data so that we can drive engagement. And that means also having an ability to connect with other sources to pull in lots of context around that candidate and get a 360-degree view of who that person really is. You'll have an ability to do pipelining and search, enrich these profiles. When they come into a system, then they're 3 years old in your ATS. Beamery can enrich them with new social data to help you know who they are today, what jobs they're in today. When we think about what that means for segmentation or what that means for marketing, marketing automation is kind of a funny thing. Marketing automation is actually not effective. Well, it's as effective as the data that drives it. So if you think about that, being able to actually find the candidates that hold the right attributes, hold the right skill sets that have been communicated with maybe in the last 30 days or the last 180 days, how do you find those candidates to segment to actually drive to the right type of messaging and content? We want to help you guys make your talent teams specialists because they know how to communicate with the talent that's out there the best. If you're going for data scientists in Singapore, there's a person that's going to know how to communicate with them better than, say, someone in London that's looking at salespeople. So to give them the tools and the content necessary to actually drive a unique experience to candidates is what Beamery is built to do. If we think about how these experiences start to evolve, it's about actually identifying people as personas and realizing that you can drive a unique set of engagement for each type of persona based on different attributes that that candidate possesses, different types of behavior that you've had with the candidate in the past, and who they are. Connect is really about having Beamery be your kind of single source of truth on a candidate based on the whole life cycle of that candidate's journey. Not just from the day that they apply for a job on your website, but all the way from them being a prospect when you found them in a passive state on LinkedIn, all the way through to even being an alumni, to re-engage them, to help you with your Glassdoor reviews and everything else. It's to track the candidate through the entire process of their relationship with you. And it really is about building this relationship and helping people in talent to focus on that instead of having to do a lot of monotonous work or just laborious work inside of a ATS. So what I wanted to do was surprise you a little bit, but I've got 3.5 minutes left. So let's see here how far we can get. But to give you a customer example, this is a very, very large organization, over 500,000 employees, maybe more. Well, millions maybe, a major influence in the universe. That'd be the Galactic Empire. So wanted to kind of give you an idea that, they didn't pipeline correctly to protect their first Death Star. And basically that led to not building that piece that covered up that little hole there. So what we did to help this company or this organization actually pipeline for talent, one was to help them with actually building communities for the Galactic Empire, making it very easy for those talent scouts to actually create their own content, to very easily put together landing pages that are geared towards specific communities, and to then engage them through forms and actually extract more information on who that candidate is with simple questions that may actually qualify or disqualify them. Are they for the mission or friends? Are they, in this case, what's your skill? Is it lightning? Okay. By selecting these types of drop-downs, you are actually, as a candidate, filtering yourself for something that will go through an automated process in Beamery to engage that candidate in a very unique way. So there's so many touch points and data points that a candidate can actually give you explicitly, but also things that you can capture on a candidate as well. When we think about this, we think about it in terms of recipes. So I take it some of you are familiar with if this, then that logic. What Beamery is about is actually enabling you to not even have to write code, but put in logic to say, when a candidate's answered such and such questions, if they are, say, the Galactic Empire likes to hire from Google a lot, if they work for Google and they have the hobby of listening to music, and then we want to take actions, add them to a talent pool, add them to campaigns, add them to users, assign them different tags. So this is a very quick way to automate a process to give a candidate a journey, and then also to categorize them inside the system so you can find them very easily. This also applies to, say, things like GDPR, which Galactic Empire is actually very compliant. So if you think about that, Beamery is also running automated checks on every field that sits on a candidate to check whether or not those fields are filled, and if they are, it triggers another action based on whether or not they fit the right criteria in a filter. So this is a new way of actually approaching giving candidates a very unique experience. When we think about actually reforming the way that recruiters will work, it's a matter of saying, I know that I have several vacancies that are coming up in the next month. What am I going to do first? Well, what we don't want to do anymore is start posting advertisements for that job. I think the first thing we want to do is look internally and see if we have any internal mobility pipelines to see if there's good candidates inside of our own company that we want to place into new roles. Next, we want to look at external pipelines, see if there's anything that we've actually built relationships with. Once we find a good pool, then it's a matter of actually saying, within that type of talent pool, how far have we got engaged candidates? How far down that funnel are they? The first place I'm going to go is the ones that are interested in a new job, because this is the group of people that when I introduce them to a job, they are already ready and interested in applying to it. So it can reduce my time to hire incredibly fast. I can filter down on this as well and just make sure that I've got the right group of candidates. Maybe from there, what I do is I take that select list, click that whole group, and run a group action to send a campaign. In this case, join us, it's your destiny. And I shoot off a first touch email to actually get people to join the Galactic Empire. If they don't respond, well, then they die. But I can actually run rules based on follow-up triggers. And if you think about the way that in sales, engagement works, multi-touch emails actually are incredibly effective in converting candidates. Conversion numbers are incredibly important. The last thing I'm going to mention is how we actually drive metrics and transparency around every single touch point that you've had with candidates. Whether it's the campaigns and all of those touch points, whether it's actually moving candidates through the funnel and seeing the conversions of that, finding the archetypes who are actually doing it the best, and also being able to understand your actual supply and demand of your pipelines, which is incredibly important. Being able to know where you have people that are engaged and interested in your brand and look for specific roles or specific skills to see whether or not you have the supply that's going to meet the demand for jobs. To end, I will just say that we're not just working with the Galactic Empire. We do have a lot of other customers. So some of them up on the top there, I can't show you the logos, but big e-commerce, big social network, big bank, et cetera. So.